Sounds pretty good there. Good afternoon. Good evening. Okay. And cut the music. There we go. Hey, we didn't say we were professionals. We just said we're good. Good evening. Good evening. Can I trust you with my heart? That was a song I was listening to over the weekend, and I went, wow, what a wonderful lyric, and from an artist that I grew to learn to really enjoy and like and love dancing to. So that was Travis Tritt, if you didn't recognize, and the song is Can I Trust You With My Heart? I didn't buy the rights to that. We're not using it to make money, but it's awesome to lead into this kind of conversation. Hi there, I'm Brian Hall, and I'm the president and founder of Friday Harbour, a nonprofit located in Houston, Texas. You'll hear more about that later from one of our guests. I actually also spend a lot of my time working to engage with and grow and develop small and diverse owned businesses for Shell Oil Company, among many other things. And you have joined us this evening for Beacon Productions, A Candid Conversation. So thank you. Everything will be recorded, so for our guests and for our speakers, know that, and we'll be providing this to others as through social media and other ways. We're a little behind going because the human error, in a sense, and that's okay because we are all human, which is a big part of this, and we should have people joining as we go along because of the actual code for Zoom. I actually left off 2 numbers, so sorry for those that had trouble, and we should see more people join. But without further ado, let me welcome you to again Beacon Productions, A Candid Conversation. This is a series of candid conversations aimed at connecting the worlds of BK, and that's moi. Whether it's religion, nonprofits, sports, oil and gas, corporations, inclusion and equity, music, educators, students, entrepreneurs, Bearcats, Aggies, and fraternity men and women. This is really a chance for us to develop and really continue with candid conversations that connect those entities. So that's the personal why behind my candid conversation and my offering of this platform. So thank you for being here. Every 2 weeks, we're going to launch into this kind of conversation. And the reason why is I call it the moose on the table. The moose on the table today is the fact that we have the edges, as I call it. And if you can see me, the edges are folks all the way to this side and all the way to this side that tend to get the attention, tend to get the notoriety and the conversations around them, where the ones in the middle, whether it's 80 or 90% of us, that really just want to do things, cause things, and impact things, seldom get a chance to do that. So the goal here is to bring those edges, not bring the edges together, because that's what you're going to hear about from our guests. It's really to create a conversation for all of us to get through what we've seen lately, and more importantly, something that's really systematic. And I read this today from a friend, and I said, man, I've got to share this because it truly is. This kind of platform, whether it's here or whether it's you talking to your families, you talking to your friends, you talking to your coworkers, you talking to your church group, whatever you are, these are opportunities for us to encourage and hear a genuine attempt to create safe spaces where we can be heard, each of us, we can be seen and respected, and work on dismantling systematic racism. What I'll end with is that systematic racism isn't black and white or black. It is anything and everything that has to do with how ordinary humans, particularly in the US, make decisions, don't make decisions, or cause harm, or hold someone back because they are somewhat in some way different. And right now, racism clearly is one of the platforms that clearly needs a adjustment and a strong adjustment. But that's really what this platform is all about. So with that said, again, welcome to Beacon Productions, Candid Conversation. And tonight we're going to spend 50 minutes that you won't give back with two wonderful individuals, leaders, and I think bright lights. Doesn't mean they don't have flaws, don't mean that they are challenged or struggling with things. It just means that they are one of those that are beacons, maybe like some of you on the call. Both are healing social injustice and healing cancer. You're going to get a chance to hear their who, their what, and their why. But let me first introduce them. By the way, if you have a question that you would like for one of these guests to respond to, Gilbert Cruz, our wonderful producer, I can call him producer, unpaid producer, so we got to figure out how to give him $1 or $2. Send the questions in on the chat line and he'll get those to you. But quickly, we've got Yolanda Smith on the line, and Yolanda is here in Houston, Texas as the executive director of the Houston branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. NAACP, the NAACP is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization whose members throughout the country, the world are premier advocates for civil rights in their communities, conducting voter mobilization, it's a voting year, as you know, and monitoring equal opportunity in the public and in the private space. You'll hear, in Yolanda's own words, a little bit more about what she does and why, but be clear that as a leader, both on a local, a regional, and a national, and maybe even on a global stage, she can't get that done. She's responsible for developing and implementing and managing effective and creative strategies that engage and secure and steward a wide range of not only key prospects to meet or exceed her organizational and committee funding goals, but also to administer the budget and, of course, the activities of the NAACP. Graduate of Texas Christian University, go Horned Frogs. I think that's it.
Horned Frogs.
I'm going to get it before we're done. Go Horned Frogs from up in Fort Worth, Texas. And Yolanda is, as I said, here in Houston, and she has a wonderful husband, Andre, and a proud parent of Andre II, and Leland and Amanda Smith. Welcome, Yolanda. We'll give you a minute in just a second to introduce yourself and share your opening thoughts. Second, we have the gentleman from the mountains west of here, Mr. Juan Carlos JC Giron Jr. JC, as he's called, he brings more than a decade of strategic finance, investment management, and capital markets and business development experience, most recently serving as the president and chief financial officer of a New York Stock Exchange traded mining and resource development company. He's formerly a financial advisor in the international division with UBS Financial Services. I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit about how he made many people wealthy. In April 2019, JC left UBS to establish Process Alpha Consulting and was recruited to a key strategic development role by the executive chairman and CEO of a privately held wastewater treatment company, currently serving its clients in the landfill, mining, and oil and gas vertical markets. Of course, you can imagine that role. He's had plenty of experience working with C-suite and executives, probably from all corners of not only the US, but even around the world. He's passionate about strategic philanthropy and public service, and I'm proud to say that he serves on the Friday Harbour Executive Committee as our vice president, and I'm sure he has, again, some other items he'll share with us as he makes his introduction, but welcome to you, JC. So we got Yolanda Smith with the National Association of Advancement of Colored People, and JC Giron of not only Investment World, but Friday Harbour, a local nonprofit healing cancer one night at a time. Let's jump into this. Yolanda, tell us more.
Well, you know, the big thing that I'm super proud about is, in my role as executive director of our NAACP here in Houston, is really the opportunity to be a connector and be involved in so many activities. And the one thing about, the NAACP is we have obviously the legacy of being the oldest civil rights organization in the country, 112 years. But more than that, just the ability to be able to work with so many organizations and so many, our membership across all age spectrums. So, we operate locally and even with the national, within our advocacy committees. A lot of people don't understand what the NAACP does, but the work of the NAACP expands throughout all generations, all cultures, but more than that, through the work of the NAACP, or the work of the NAACP is done through our advocacy committees. And that ranges from our youth enrichment programs, our economic development programs, our veterans affairs, our environmental and climate justice issues, our education. Of course, civic engagement is a huge priority for the NAACP, and criminal justice matters, as you can imagine. So we always pride ourselves in saying that there is a home for everyone within the NAACP, regardless of how old you are or how young you are. There is a place for the NAACP. In my unique role, I'm able to connect all of the various age groups, all of the various individuals, and be able to utilize or hone in on their tools and their talents to be able to give back to our community. Our community needs the help of everyone. And for those that feel like, that the NAACP is an old organization, which it is, the role of the really thing that I'm priding myself right now on is identifying and mentoring our next generation of leaders. And that's the thing that we have to really, really, be cognizant of. None of us are going to be here forever. And so we have to be able to mentor and guide the next generation of leaders in this civil rights movement, this social justice movement. It's certainly not, and I say this often to our kids, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight. The NAACP in our 112 years, we're still working on issues. We're still fighting fights that we won and lost, over time. We're trying to refight those fights to this day. And so we have to keep impressing upon our seniors, our seasoned members, and our younger members that the fight, it's a fight for all of us to be engaged in. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the amount of individuals that have this newfound energy in being engaged in social justice issues. I think, quite honestly, that, and I don't want to say it's because of COVID-19, but I think the fact that so many of us have been home, and we were home, and we've been, we were here to see, whether it's on TV or on our social media feeds, the death of George Floyd. I think that was a wake-up call for so many people that either didn't know it was going on or kind of heard about, is that really true? What is Black Lives Matter? And I'm not talking about the actual grassroots organization. I'm talking about the movement. The Black Lives Matter movement is our day, today's day, the civil rights movement. And so we encourage all individuals to be involved in the movement itself. It's not about an organization. It's about the movement, and understanding that we know that all lives matter, but right now there is a particular pinpoint that we need to ensure that individuals understand that this is not someone's, it's not a conspiracy theory, that things that's happening, or there's this systemic racism that's been going on in African-American communities, it's real. And the fact that we were able to see the death of a man that was, that suffocated for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and you couldn't turn your eye, and you can't unsee something like that. So I think that really has energized individuals to be more aware of what's going on, understand the privileges, or even the fact that they don't have to deal with things like that, or they've never had to deal with things like that, or the fact that it's happening, whether we want to realize it or be not so much be involved in it, but understand that it is happening and that it's something that everyone can be part of in solving the problem.
Thank you, Yolanda. That's just when you think there's some points that I'm going to go deeper with you on in just a minute. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Reminding you again, you're on the Beacon Productions of A Candid Conversation, and you just heard a little bit from Yolanda Smith, the Executive Director for the Houston branch of the NAACP. JC, give us an introduction. Tell us a little bit about what you do and maybe why.
Yeah, so as you alluded to in your intro, and thanks a lot for having me here. Super excited to be a part of the discussion. Currently a financial consultant. I have a background in corporate finance, investment management, currently serve as an advisor to some startups, and most importantly and most special to me is the vice president of Friday Harbour. And really, I'm sure we'll get into it in a little bit here, but why I do it is because of people. People are what challenged me to get into the business of nonprofits. People are what keep me going. And I would say, if there's a link between my for-profit activities and my nonprofit activities, it's really that. It's a sense of duty to pay forward from the blessings that I've received as an individual from people who have inputted into my life. Not least of which is someone on this call right now has been a great mentor to me. So there's a desire and a natural satisfaction that comes from applying a skill set that's sort of a product of one's individual life experience in an effort to create solutions for the problems and challenges that individuals and organizations are facing. So a little bit of a background there.
Sweet. Yolanda, I missed your why. Why are you doing the work that you do?
I think the biggest reason is because it's something that my grandparents, on both sides always taught me that, and we say this often, to much that's given, much is required of us. The why for me is because I feel like even with the issues that we face as a race, that I have been blessed in many ways. And I enjoy being able to give back to our community and impart, things that I've experienced in my life with, our community, our youth, and helping them to be more engaged in the community and understanding the importance of being engaged in the community. But I learned at a very young age from my grandparents to always stay engaged and stay involved, not just in the church. That was a big thing, Church of God in Christ. We were at church many days, not just Sunday. It was almost 7 days a week. But to be involved in the community and to give back. And so that's always been my why. That's just something that it's part of my DNA.
Well, I wonder when we think about why, because, I was talking to a group today, actually it happened to be Houston professional firefighters. Most of them were retired, and they're working on a special project that has a loose connection to Friday Harbor's mission. But one of the things that we were talking about was there's this, and again, not bringing out in the sense of them, because I think any of you here can think about this in your own organization or your own company, is that there are people that really are confused, angry, tired, and any other adjective that you can come up with. And what I asked them as they were displaying and sharing their comments around those emotions, they said, what do you think, Brian? And I said, well, what's your why? And they kind of looked at each other. And this is a group that's come together as a team to do something really wonderful that I hope does come through for the city of Houston. But as I sat there, they were so consumed in a sense through their concerns and what hadn't worked and why it hadn't worked, that they really didn't and weren't in alignment on their why. So you both mentioned something, a word together, and that's mentorship. What does that mean to you? Because I know people hear mentorship and maybe they ask for it, or maybe they think they are being mentored, but are they? And how do we know if that's happening? Either one of you want to address that?
I mean, I'll take a stab at it. My idea of mentorship is, and I this is the deal with me. If I can teach someone techniques, strategies, how to lead others, how to be involved, but more importantly, get other individuals involved, that's a huge goal for me. And we have marches, we have protests. I mean, that's just something that the NAACP does, but I always tell our youth, if you are marching and there's just no one with you, you're just walking, okay? And the deal is, if you are not engaged, if you're not inspiring other people, if you're not convincing other people why it's important for you to march, why it's important for you to go to City Hall to talk about whatever the ordinance is that they're trying to pass, why it's important for you, to go to HISD to talk about them, right now there's a push to make the teachers uncertified, to hire a lot of uncertified teachers. If you can't convince your circle, your own network, of why this issue is important to you and why it should be important, why it shouldn't be important to them, then that's the deal. So my goal is to help our individuals, whether they're old or young, because we've got of all ages, but particularly when I talk about our next geners, and I'm talking about our recent college grads, all the way up to 30, 40 years old. They got to be able to understand not just the issue. Being educated is one thing, being passionate is another thing, but you've got to be able to be engaged and bring other people along, because it's not a one person. There are no I's in the NAACP. It's just that simple. It's 5 letters and none of them are I's. It's all about involving everyone. It has to be involved. You have to involve everyone. So I try really hard to teach our young people and mentor our young people into finding other individuals that have your same passion and understand what you're trying to get accomplished, to work on that. Otherwise, you're just walking, and we need people marching.
That was really amazing. If I'd add maybe one quick comment there. When I think of mentorship, I think of grace, and that it's something that is received and not necessarily deserved. And that, strikes me as one of the most powerful things about mentorship, is that it's really an amazing thing to think that in this day and age, and everyone's so busy, everyone's got a full calendar, that there are people who simply because they feel that it's the right thing to do, will contribute their time to reaching out and developing someone who has a desire to learn and grow in a particular area. So when I think of mentorship, and it's something that, to your question, Brian, earlier, how do you think about it? Is it something, how do people know if they're mentored? It's a great point. I would say that I sort of realized retroactively a few years ago that I've had some really incredible mentors. Because, maybe I'd sort of formalized the concept of a mentor as someone who's sort of, a coach that I formally go to and ask certain things, when mentorship can be incredibly subtle. And I think at its core, it's about sort of an outpouring of time, attention, and grace to people who are looking for that and who need that. So.
Thank you both. Thank you. Yolanda, I've often heard about the NAACP that it's, or at least in recent years, it's not your grandfather's NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
What have you heard? I'm asking if you've heard that, which is probably a ludicrous question at
Oh,
this point, but
absolutely.
what does that mean?
Absolutely.
Or
It
what should
means
that mean?
it means that it's for our young adults. We just ended just at 6 o'clock this afternoon. We have a weekly Facebook Live show. I'm behind the scenes. You'll never see me on the Facebook. You may, but I doubt it, because I'm pushing our younger folks to lead the conversation. So today's guest it was about Juneteenth and music. So we had Mad Hatter, 97.9 The Box radio host, former radio host, Rob G, Seven the Poet. We had people that our young generation can relate to. They don't want to see me. They don't want to see Dr. Douglas. And we love our seasoned citizens, our seasoned members, but they want to see people that they can relate to. And I think about, like I say, my grandparents are still living, and they're still members of our NAACP in Fort Worth. And they're still, to the extent that they can be at 92 and 95 years old, still involved. But we've got to teach our kids, we've got to be able to pass the baton and let them run with it. But we've got to guide them. We've got to teach them, the do's and don'ts of this movement. And like I say, you've got individuals that, want to make the issues about them. And it's all about training and guiding them and mentoring. I still use that word on how best to get what you need to get accomplished. Because when you make it about you, it's not going to work. It's got to be about the community that's being served. And so that's why I say, you're absolutely right. That phrase is used often. And to be honest with you, our young people, they're ready to, we're ready to go. We need y'all to move out the way. But we do have some, I promise you, I hear that. We're ready. And I'm, I try, I'm in that bridge where obviously I work with all ages, because you still want to be able to sit at the feet, if you will, of a Reverend Lawson. And you can't get that wisdom in a book. You just can't. You can't get the wisdom that a Howard Jefferson or an Al Green has in a book. And they're not teaching it in HISD, in no other school district. It's just that simple. You got to be able to have even be humble enough to know you don't know everything. And that's the thing I try to really impart upon individuals. You don't know everything. You're just learning this. And so these people know the game, have played the game, made up the game. So you have to be able to understand, don't be so quick to try to put our seasoned citizens in the pasture. They have a lot to give. They're ready to pass the baton. They're ready for you to run with it, but they don't want to just give it to anybody.
I wonder, when we get towards the end, one of the things I'll prepare you for is that, what's the future look like? And are we going to let it happen, or are we going to make the future? And so when I think about what you just shared, Yolanda, when you talk about this, is it your fathers or grandfathers in NAACP, making that statement alone without having a ready and willing transitional audience it gets lost, right?
Yes.
So I think it's important that you brought that up, because if you think about the journey that we have, whether it's about what's happened in the last 2 weeks to 6 weeks or 6 months, it's really what's going to happen that's ahead of us that I think we want to get to. And one thought I just had is, how do we get the Reverend Lawsons and others into an audience that doesn't normally get a chance to see them, so that they can, I think wisdom doesn't know color. It certainly shouldn't know color, and it certainly shouldn't know race and ethnicity either. So anyway, just a thought, when we get to where do we go from here, I wonder if that's some of your thinking. And by the way, looking at you on this Zoom call, I don't know, I assume you're in that who's taking over next space as a youngster, but we'll get to that later.
I'm trying to find them.
I think, well, no, I'm saying you fit into that. You fit in that. Look at that. You look 21. Come on now.
I'll take it. I promise you, I'll take it. But I mean, I literally am. I'm trying to identify that next person. I'd love to train my successor and move out the way, whoever it is, and just be there as a guide. Y'all call me when you need me. I'm going to be there in the background.
I love it.
I'd
well,
love
if you take what JC said a minute ago, that you're probably mentoring someone that doesn't even recognize that you are, doesn't even understand that you are in fact preparing them, and that you are opening them up to do something even greater, maybe than what you end up doing as you go forward. JC, we're going to round out this section, of which is still around us. How do we get it deeper and deeper into the why? And so, I've heard so far, there's mentorship in there. There's this passion. There's this too much is given, much is expected, which can send some people to the hills, right? Because that's a challenge. And you may look out your window or look on social media and go, oh, they got it. Someone else has it. JC, I'm going to switch into the realm by which you spend a lot of your volunteer time, and that's in the cancer-related space. I don't know if I want to be the one that says, racial injustice or social injustice and cancer diagnosis and other ailments that you didn't plan for, you didn't budget for, you didn't put it on your schedule, but here you are facing it. And do you face it alone? Do you have an audience that helps you? Do you have a circle of friends? Do you have elders that help you get through that? What would you say are some of the challenges that face anyone that's addressing maybe a systemic situation like cancer can be?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I'd wager that there's not a single person on this Zoom who hasn't been impacted directly or indirectly by cancer. Cancer is a devastating disease. One of sort of the core elements that we focus on at Friday Harbour is understanding that the vast majority of expenses that are incurred by patients and families over the course of the cancer journey are actually not directly insurance billable medical expenses. They're the ancillary expenses. It's parking at the med center. It's lost time at work. It's potentially quitting a job to have to, uproot everything and take your family to a new city where you can, if you're a single mother, for example, be with her child as the child's fighting the battle of cancer. So, certainly there are the direct measurable costs of the cancer journey. They're the intangible impacts of the cancer journey that I think, are equally devastating in their effect. Depression, a lack of a feeling of self-worth. And I think sort of, any one of us who has gone through a very intense challenge in life understands what it feels like when everything else in the world sort of shuts down and the only thing you can focus on is sort of making it one day to the next, one step to the next, and all of the different negative impacts that can have on an individual's life. And all that being said, the reality is, and it's something that, we think about every day, is that as terrible as cancer is for everyone, and we often talk about the fact that cancer is the great equalizer because it does reach into every single community, the effects are always going to be far, far worse on the individuals in our society who institutionally don't have access to the same kinds of resources and support that other individuals do. So certainly Friday Harbor's mission is a social justice mission. It's not exclusively a social justice mission. I think healing knows no class, but certainly that's a massive component of what we do. I mean, there's many studies that show that, the most vulnerable members of societies, whether they be single mothers, whether they be individuals of color, whether they be individuals living in rural areas who don't have access to cancer treatment centers nearby, these are the most vulnerable individuals in society. And when we sort of, go back and think about the why, the reality is this kind of work and it's maybe different for those of us who don't work in the nonprofit space full time, so to speak. But for those of us who are volunteers in the space, we do it for free. And I think that's probably true of the work that a lot of us do. We would do it for free. Now, the world doesn't quite work that way. Someone's got to pay the bills usually. But why do we do it for free? Because there's a sense of duty involved, and because there's a sense of a moral obligation in being of service and being of use to our fellow man. And I think that when you have that sense of duty, I think the sense of duty to help those who are the least fortunate is only intensified and magnified.
See any similarities in that, Yolanda, to the journey that you chase? Yeah.
Absolutely. He was right on point. I totally agree. And so I think even with the pandemic, and it's been said often recently that the pandemic exposed how badly there was a disproportionate reality for America. There's clearly two, the haves and the have-nots, and it's unfortunate, but it certainly shined a spotlight on exactly the health disparities that we face as a race.
Well, it's these are powerful. I want to say thoughts. It's amazing to see the wealth or the vision, if I can say, of wealth that the United States has or has access to, if that's the right word, and maybe you guys can talk to that, but that you see that and you understand that just the two leaders that we have on the call here tonight, that you're both fighting or challenging and embracing and acting on two rivers, if you will, that you go, how does it go unnoticed until a global pandemic happens? Mm-hmm. Or has it, question might be better, has it been unnoticed, or has it been noticed and just how would you finish that sentence? Has it been noticed and blank? What would you say to that?
Has it been noticed, but no response, or no one's done anything about it? I think that's probably how I would. And JC, you can answer, but I certainly think it's been noticed in certain communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thoughts, JC?
Yeah. I think that, and for one, slight tangent, but to Yolanda's point about the disparity that's been noticed during the pandemic, you see here, I've got this incredible background behind me. And, the reality is that's been a lot of my experience of the pandemic has been more time to do some of the things that I haven't had time to do before. And that's, I think, an incredibly privileged position to be in at this point in time. Has it been noticed? I think that something like a pandemic creates an opportunity for everyone, and I mean that term very, very broadly because there's nuance, to experience a calamity that in some ways has impacted pretty much everyone all at once and together. Mm-hmm. One of maybe the most striking analogies that could be drawn would be Hurricane Harvey in Houston. It was a disaster where, I had the pleasure and privilege of living in Houston for 13 years. And, those of us that have spent time in Houston know that it floods almost every year, right? But it doesn't flood in Memorial every year. Mm-hmm. It doesn't flood in Cinco Ranch every year. And so I think that one of the very striking things that emerged from Hurricane Harvey was this tremendous sense of community that personally, I feel like the city has felt like a better place ever since that. So I do think it's been noticed. I think that in today's day and age, it's important not only to notice, but to take action. And I think sometimes that can be fleeting. I think that we've got a news cycle where there's always going to be sort of the flavor of the month. And I think our sort of political and and media system is designed to capitalize on that. It's been noticed. It needs to be noticed more, and hopefully people will be galvanized to take action as a result.
Well, we're going to get to some of those actions here in a few minutes as we look at the final stretch here of this candid conversation. And to the guests on, thank you again for being part of the Beacon Productions of A Candid Conversation.
But you know what, Brian, on that, while JC was saying something, and you hit the nail on the head when you talked about using the flood analogy. You know, the areas that clearly, like you said, it floods here in Houston, and there are certain areas that you'll never see water, high water, you know, and being the fact that this pandemic exposed that it hit everywhere. You know, obviously senior citizens were impacted more, but again, as I said earlier, the African-American community, you really saw the numbers high there. But understanding, where do we go from there? Understanding that the African-American community and Latino community are disproportionately impacted by both Hurricane Harveys, by both the coronavirus. You know, we as a community of human beings have to be more engaged in helping everyone, not just the fact that we didn't suffer from it because we live in Memorial or we live in Cinco Ranch. But for those that live in Hiram Clark, for those that live in Sunnyside, for those that live, you know, in near these bayou areas that flooded, we need to be looking out for them too. And I think flipping now over to, I say, the unrest with the George Floyd and even the Rayshard Brooks murder, you know, the new catchphrase I'm hearing, people are asking about being anti-racist. What does that mean? I think that's an important, you know, and I hope it's not just for the moment, but I think it's important for individuals to understand the concept of being anti-racist. And it's not meaning be out, no justice, no peace, and marching all day, every day. That's not for everybody. That's really not. But even in your own little small circles, if you understand that racism is a learned behavior, you weren't born racist. It is a learned behavior. So just as you learn something, you can unlearn something. So even in our small circles of the people that we talk with, we have to consciously, you know, be part of progression, consciously take part in activities and actions that help everybody. You may live in Memorial, but are you looking out for the people in Hiram Clark? You know, you may live in Spring, but are you looking out for the people in Sunnyside? So I think that all of that's involved. Everybody has a role to, you know, look out for everybody. And it's, you know, my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper, whatever words you want to use. But I think that everybody has a role and can play a part in being anti-racist, because I think for a lot of individuals that buried their head in the sand as it relates to what's going on in this country, you know, many folks benefited from those systemic structures, those institutional structures that have been in place for generations. We're at 401 years since slaves were brought over here. So we've had just, you know, a lot of history of pain in African-American communities, but it doesn't have to always be like that. And you can, in your own small way, make a big difference in being part of the solution.
Well said, well said. The Yolanda and JC, part of this journey has been because, you know, technology is king now. I mean, well, if you think about it, when it works, for sure. Let's be clear. We all experienced a little bit of that today, didn't we? Yeah. But that's okay. It's like it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. but what I was thinking when I thought of the fact that, yeah, technology allows us to now, if you're in Spring, you can connect to someone in Galveston. Again, used to be the phone or get in your car and drive. Now you can literally be face to face on a medium such as this. If you are someone committed to battling for those who suffer, if I can use that word, through a medical experience, and face inequities because of that. And I heard one today, and again, I'm bringing this up only because I committed that, hey, it's open. Information should be more open and more available, and that comes through folks like you. And when you hear about there are people that get in harm's way every day on behalf of the citizens or on behalf of their neighbors, whether it's police or whether it's firefighters or nurses and all, and you find that if they're facing a medical situation, that there are limitations even for them. And those limitations are, in some cases, in Brian Hall's opinion, based on someone's decision to either offer it or not offer it, cover it or not cover it. But yet the human part of it, which is that's a human that comes to work or comes into your organization or comes to your space, giving their all and investing their all at their time of need. Are we there to help them? So as I think about how we wrap this up there this afternoon, this is not, you said it, I think, Yolanda, this isn't a sprint, this is a marathon. This is about how do we start today and literally get up in the morning thinking about how many people are you going to help versus thinking about the one person you're going to hurt or leave behind or ignore or treat differently or all of that. I'm going to ask you, I wanted to have a fun round with you, but my producer in the ear is telling me, keep it tight. But there's a fast round that I wanted to go through, and you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to go through it real quick. But what I want to end on is the hope, the expectations, the needs, but really more importantly, what's a one step in front of the next step that we must take? I know we can do a lot, but what must we do? That's what I'm going to ask you to end on. But I'm going to clear your ears and your mind for a minute and see if there's some things that you could answer lickety split, okay? So get ready. Shake your head, clear it out a little bit. Let's see if we can come with this. What do you think, and you just jump in when you need to, but we're not going to spend a lot of time. We're just going to get to it. What do you think causes hate? Quick answer.
No education. Lack of education.
JC.
Fear.
What do you think causes hope?
Love.
Compassion.
What's the best book you've read?
Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl.
Yolanda?
Oh. Yeah. Oh. Real quick, the new Jim Crow, Yale Alexander. I mean, that's one I go to often.
I just looked that one to get that one. The best challenge that you've overcome.
Fear of failure. Work in progress.
Keeping my mouth shut. That is a huge challenge for me.
There's a lot behind that, and we will talk about that next time. When's the last time? Oh, sorry. Who did you last tell I love you?
My kids.
My girlfriend.
Where do you get your inspiration?
My kids.
It's funny because in some ways it's in the places I least expect to find it, but pretty much consistently always from the other people in my life. Asked or unasked.
Love it. Last one. who is one person, think about this quickly, who is one person that you will call tomorrow and have a candid conversation with?
Ken Reeves. Ken Reeves is the head of the White Lives Matter movement, and I've been wanting to call him. I just hadn't gotten to it, but it's crazy, and I know we're on fast track here, but a couple of years ago, our NAACP was picketed by this group, White Lives Matter, with AK-47s and all kind of machine guns in front of the NAACP, and it made national news. And it's crazy, but Ken and I got to become somewhat friends in that, because I really just wanted to know, why did you pick it up? What was the deal with that? But we had some really good conversations, and I hadn't talked to him since all this was going on. So I think I really want to reach out to Ken.
I wouldn't have, you'd have given me 100 guesses. I wouldn't have guessed that.
I
Good
know.
job. JC, one person.
My grandmother.
Oh.
Wonderful. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I've got the wonderful Yolanda Smith, the executive director of the Houston NAACP branch. And as you can see, God's glory is shining on her right there with the sunshine coming through. That's he liked your answer. I tell you that we can't produce that. He goes, oh, that is awesome. Yolanda Smith, the executive director of the NAACP Houston branch, and of course JC Giron. He is a financial guru and the vice president of Friday Harbour here in Houston. Let's make the future. And let me before we end with one last question, and that is, I want to say thank you, one, to the folks that participated, and those of you that will hear this afterwards, because it will be recorded and shared. Apologies for any error that prevented you from joining, but this is a candid conversation, and it's my commitment to facilitating and opening and offering those kind of conversations. And maybe, Yolanda, maybe we need to have NAACP and White Lives Matter on this platform. You never know. Could be interesting.
Ken would be very interesting. He's very interesting.
Well, you've shared a lot of information, including where, when, and who your next candid conversation is, and you've also shared a lot around what's next. And we really, I think one thing, if I think about it, this, and I may use this as my next candid conversation, is no response, no action. And I'm not sure we got comfortable with is that in a good place, or is it in a place that truly needs to be uncovered? Because many folks that I've talked to over the last week have said, Brian, when I see rioting and people tearing up things that don't belong to them, I shut down. I don't want to have a conversation because that is not right. Yeah? And then you hear folks from another side, if you can call it the other side, that say, look, I'm scared to death. I'm standing with one foot nailed to the ground because I'm scared for my kids. I'm scared for my family. I don't know if we're going to make it through this. And the challenge in both of those circumstances is that we're not talking, we're not having, and not opening up a candid conversation. So I'll ask you, just for the listeners, and you can end it on this. I want to say thank you to the producer, Gilbert, for his unwavering commitment to put this together. And of course, friends over at Stallion Productions, they do roofing systems, Stallion Solutions, I should say, who's given us the brand, because nothing gets done without a team, as Yolanda said. And I don't want to be caught walking. I want to be caught, what did you say? Not walking, but marching. And so as we march forward in this Beacon Productions Candid Conversation, what would you recommend that someone's listening, what would you recommend that they do starting maybe when they wake up tomorrow? One thing from each of you.
Get engaged. Find out what's going on. Find out your key. What are you able to do to contribute to your community? That's the one thing that I tell people. And it doesn't have to be the NAACP. Of course, we always encourage individuals to be members of the NAACP. Membership is $30 a year. We spend that in 2 seconds wherever. But find an organization that you can devote, give your tools, your talents, your resources, your energy to, and be part of the solution. That's what I would say. And understand that the movement, it's not a linear progression. I mean, there's steps forward and steps back. We scoot over, we move back here, we put this issue to the side and scoot over here. It just has to keep moving.
Love it, love it. Thank you, Yolanda. JC, closing comments. What's next?
Yeah, next steps, engage with diversity that makes you uncomfortable. Each of us can engage with a level of diversity that makes us uncomfortable wherever we are. Something I've been doing is reading news articles and op-eds that I strongly disagree with and keeping an open mind. I think there's probably no better example than the one Yolanda gave of her engagement with the White Lives Matter movement. You started the conversation by talking about how polarized our society feels. And I'm a firm believer that polarization is not going to be resolved by becoming increasingly polarized and sort of hoping we draw people over to our extreme side. I think each one of us has a personal duty, and it's a very much a personal journey of expanding our consciousness and engaging with diversity. And fortunately, that's as easy as picking up your phone nowadays.
I love it. Well, once again, Yolanda Smith, NAACP, JC Giron with the Friday Harbour Group. Thank you. I'm Brian Hall, Beacon Productions, A Candid Conversation, June 17th. That's a wrap. Everyone be safe, be kind, and be in conversation. Thanks so much for everyone. And
thank you, Brian.
And take care.
Thank you so much.